everyone, welcome back to Blooms and Bicycles and Merry Christmas. I can't quite believe it's that time of year again already, but there we are. And as we pedal into the winter time, the shorter days now grace us with icy blue skies and sparkling sunlight. Refracting as it passes through the sugar dustings of frost and icicles alike, it creates an iridescent effect with flashes of golden tones, pearlescent pinks and cooler greens, which can now be seen upon the sprigs of evergreen and the bare branches of nature which now lie dormant, and together twinkle against the cold white rolling mists. Now also the time for the festivities of Christmas, these winter wonderland days make the perfect reason to gather around the crackling fire and keep warm with the ruby red treats of mulled wine and cranberry-flavoured foods. Taking inspiration from the magical moments of the holiday season, we bring to you the Christmas Winter Wonderland flower collection. In today's video, we'll be sharing with you how to construct the Christmas Winter Wonderland Teapot letterbox flowers. And today our water vessel is already prepared with the water and the flower feed. However, if you would like to understand what to do to increase the longevity of your flowers and prepare them properly, you can find the link in the description box below to our flower care video. So to begin with, we'll start by constructing the grid as we always do with the strongest and sturdiest of stems. And in this collection that is the pine branches for a splash of evergreen and also for total Christmas vibes, the gold Ilex, which is like a piece of jewellery, and this mottled pink and green variety of Berzelia. So we'll work first of all with our pine, which will already come trimmed down for you in the box. As we always do, we'll trim it right down because the water vessel is shorter than a usual vase. And making sure no pine needles fall under the watermark. If things are very long and projecting outwards a bit too far for your liking, you can always just trim away by pushing the needles to one side to reveal the main stem underneath. And snipping away on an angle, we can then just refix in place the needles on the main stem, and now we have an extra branch to use. So we'll just crisscross these over and knit them all together, making sure that once they are knitted into place, they are anchored in such a way that they don't want to topple out. So we'll add a few more pieces. This smaller one we've just cut off, I think would look perfect in the spout. And now to just trim away the final pieces. So this one is very long and upright, with no sort of sweeping shape to it. So this will look perfect, stood right up at the top, to help with that cascading effect that we always go for. And you have an option here. You could actually just leave this as it is with the 4 offshoots coming from the one main stem, or you could actually trim each of these away and start to arrange them as you like around the opening of the vase because they'd be shorter pieces. However, given this arrangement so far has now got an even distribution between the central area and off to the right, I think this will be nice just left in place as it is, albeit trimmed down slightly and positioned off to the left. So now to take our gold jewels. I think this has to be a focal point really, doesn't it? This is definitely one of the showstoppers in the collection. So trimming this slightly and trimming off any of the offshoots which would fall under the watermark again. So we'll just wiggle this stem into place in between all of the pine stems which have been positioned so far. And now we'll take our pieces of Berzelia. In this variety in particular, there is a beautiful cerise, almost maroony pink that runs throughout the flower heads in between all the mottled greens. And this offers a beautiful graduation from the greenery and the foliage of this collection into the other flower heads that we will add in a moment. So we'll trim these off to different heights and we'll put the shorter one towards the front, again just weaving it through what's been knitted together so far, And with this one now sloping off to the left, we'll position the taller one and make sure it slopes off to the right at the back. And now just to take our other pieces of gold, which in this collection are a gold cedar rose and a gold glittery pine cone, just for a bit of extra glitz and glam. So the pine cone has now been trimmed down and is a little bit shorter than the cedar rose. I think we'll actually trim this down even further again, and we'll position this towards the front. With pine cones being so synonymous with Christmas, positioning this where it's very visible will help sum up the fact that this collection is here to celebrate the Christmas period. And this cedar rose being so long naturally anyway, that's absolutely perfect, positioned at the very back in a mirror position to where the pine cone is, because one is now at the left at the front and one is at the back at the right. So now to take our final piece of metallic foliage, which comes in this beautiful rose gold colour. Again, many offshoots come from the one stem. You can leave this as it is if you like. However, today we will trim away the offshoots and use it to create as much distribution of this pink colour as possible throughout the design. And this variety is actually called skimmier. However, this could change. You might find that although it's skimmier this year, it could be another variety that's painted in this metallic pink paint next year. So now we'll just trim this away and add this one onto the opposite side to where the other two have been positioned so far. So again, making sure the pine complements it rather than dominates. We'll position it in such a way where this and the other gold pieces added so far all still have their own space. We'll now take this opportunity to add this beautiful mottled pink Helleborus. The petals are beautiful on here. They start as a real vivid pink, which actually ties in with the rose gold tones in the foliage here. And then gradually it ebbs out into like a mossy green. So this is where the Berzelia comes into its own to offer that continuity between what's added so far. Naturally, these are also very short stems, so these are definitely best placed at the very front of the flower design. And they are very delicate petals, so just making sure, very gently, that nothing abrasive from other foliage or other stems is able to damage them in any way. So now to add our icy pink roses, like the sort of tone of pink you would see in an icicle or in the crystals of frost on an icy day. So working again to the magic of three as we always do, we'll construct a triangle with each of these stems, all at varying heights. So with the shortest stem towards the front, we'll weave this into the grid. I just love how beautifully these roses sit when the grid is more established as well. So that's why it's always worthwhile waiting until midway or towards the end to introduce your roses, because they can really take on some unexpected angles. Now this is the tallest stem we have with the rose, which is why that's now being added to the back. We can actually see though there is a natural lean in the flower head, where it must have been able to seek more daylight as it was with the flower growers. So we've just spun it round so the flower cup is displayed as much as possible when you look at the front. And now adding this final piece into the other side, we'll just allow that to go in its own way in between the pine. And now to take this Icy Pink Brassica, which again adds continuity, because it's the same kind of purpley pink in the centre of this brassica as you find in the undertones of the rose gold pieces, the Helleborus and the Berzelia. And again, because this is such a sturdy and upright stem, it makes sense to put this in the central area of the display. And now to take our snowy white pieces, which are these beautiful roses and this really unusual variety of amaranthus. You just would not expect that to be an amaranthus if you've seen other varieties of amaranthus before this one. And we'll just trim this down as we do with all of these pieces. ensuring relative to the size of the water vessel, it's not too long and it's able to hold its own. Now this piece has a much greater distribution of branches, therefore this might be nice placed towards the back and just left completely as it is, with none of the offshoots trimmed away. So again, we'll just build out another triangle with our white roses. So we now have a nice piece of white with the brassica off to the left of this pink rose. Therefore, with the highest point in the triangle that we're about to build out, we'll put this off to the right of the pink rose, so there's an even distribution of the snowy white tones. As the vase starts to get full, it can just mean that you have to go through a bit of a process of trial and error to find any gaps where the stems can be added. And as you can see, this rose has just moved as we added the other one in. So we'll just fix this back into place again. There we are. Again, making the most of the grid to really take advantage of the unexpected angles that can be created. Work with the grid, finding what gap there is, which will allow for those unexpected shapes to be established. So introducing the final snowy white piece towards the front and positioning it into the grid where it looks like it's tumbling out. Having something which is in an unusual, almost horizontal angle, it just adds points of interest and keeps the eye moving throughout the display, which, as we say, the longer that happens for, the more successful your design. So now to take our ruby red pieces, which are this beautiful variety of chrysanthemum, which almost has a fuchsia pink undertone to it, and it actually looks the colour of like a deep claret red wine. And similarly, we have this dark cherry red, really unusual variety of scabiosa. And the camera doesn't do this justice because when the light passes through those delicate petals, it's almost like a purpley hue. It's beautiful. And again, it's red for Christmas, but it's an unusual variety of red. It's not the typical crimson reds that you would see from the holly berries or the tartan ribbons on the Christmas tree, but it still has that festive nod to it whilst having that unexpected twist, because it's all about those unusual surprises that offer different aspects and different points of interest in your display. So we'll just find a gap in the flower grid, wiggling in between those pine stems as much as you need to until you find a gap. And now that's gone off to the left, we'll now counterbalance it by adding this scabiosa off to the right. So it's just persevering until you find a gap in the grid. So now to take our snowy branches, which are these snow-dusted cherry blossoms. Now you can add these in individually by dotting them throughout the display, or you can keep them together as a cluster like this. So if you just ensure, if you are to keep them as a cluster, that some fan out to the left, while some fan out to the right, and some sort of go in an upright position, so it's almost got this feather effect. That's what we're going to do today. And then we'll just gently rest these in between the other flower stems. So just allowing things again to fall in their own natural way. What's quite nice now is that this cluster of snow branches has started to weave itself in between other flower heads. So again, just offering some extra points of interest. And on the subject of snowy stems, and given that it is Christmas time, we couldn't not put some mistletoe in. They are very short in the stem, so they are a good piece to put at the very front of the design. However, at least that way, if you get the chance for a cheeky kiss on Christmas Day, you can easily take them out. And whilst we're also on the subject of these mistletoes, be very careful with these berries, which take on a real glue-like consistency if they get squashed. So just be mindful of it and take extra care with any work surfaces or clothing garments that you would like to protect. So mistletoe doesn't necessarily have to sit in the water, because it will last a good number of days without water. Therefore, if you just want to insert it in between some of the flower heads without forcing it into the grid, because it is pretty packed in there now, especially with all those pine stems, then that is something you can do. And the final snowy themed flower is this gorgeous Eustoma, which almost looks like it's had its flower petals dipped in some cranberry sauce with the deep fuchsia pink that runs throughout the edges on each one. So we'll trim away the offshoots so that we have some wispy stems to counterbalance the big statement pieces which are in the display so far. And because at this point in time it also makes it a lot easier to add them into the grid in the water. So we'll just add this small one maybe next to the rose. That actually looks really sweet with the soft white and pink on this bud of this Eustoma flower here. In close proximity to this Icy Pink Rose, it just looks perfect. So we'll just keep adding these in until we find a gap in the grid. Again, we don't have to ensure that the stem goes all the way down to the bottom of the teapot, as long as it is within the water and the water is topped up regularly. And now we understand how the overall design is balanced, we'll now add in our final piece of significant red into the appropriate place. So I think if there is a gap in the grid, yes there is, so we'll just position this around there. And there you have it, the Christmas Winter Wonderland Teapot letterbox flowers. I hope you have a lovely Christmas time and we can't wait to see you here again in the new year.